Welcome to Homeschool Expert. I'm excited to talk with you today about how to get started homeschooling successfully. I believe that you know and love your child better than anyone and want to equip you with practical resources to help you homeschool confidently with help from the experts. Now, if you haven't had a chance to watch the free overview video, please pause this lesson and take 5 minutes to do that so you know how to map out the content of where we're headed. It will also give you a sneak peek into how and when we talk about curriculum. The methods taught in these lessons are the product of decades of work in the homeschool community with advice from occupational and behavioral therapists, psychologists, and nearly 100 homeschool veteran parents, as well as training as a professional educator. Most importantly, I have real-life experience practicing this at home with my 4 children who represent a variety of learning needs as well as having been homeschooled myself. You can do this, and we are here to help you homeschool like an expert. Let's get started. The goal of today's lesson is to equip you with a series of steps to help you start strong in your first month of homeschooling. In most of this training, I will teach you principles and applications that work for my family, but with the expectation you will tailor those principles as it best fits yours. This will be longer than most of the other videos, but that's to help you get off to a solid start. Before we look at the core content, let's talk about what's probably at the forefront of your mind, what to do in the first month of homeschooling. When you start schooling, I encourage you to start slowly. Let's begin there, especially if you are transitioning into homeschooling for the first time. Take this month to experiment with your new school routine and to practice the lifestyle of learning together. You have all school year to develop a quicker pace if needed, and you really will finish faster than you expect. I encourage you to make time in this first month especially to study your child, and we'll discuss how to do that practically in the second lesson. It's important to make time to connect with your child and adjust to your new relationship as parent-teacher. In the first month, I encourage you to discover the joy of homeschooling. It is a privilege to educate at home, and I am so grateful for the wealth of memories I have made with my children. Surprising as this may sound, I encourage you to start with only math and reading the first 2 weeks until you feel like you have a solid routine, particularly if your student is in elementary school. We'll talk about the older kids in a moment. Then I recommend you pause for 5 for the rest of the semester. After starting with math and reading, add 1 subject a week until you reach the 5 core subjects of math, reading, writing, history, and science, and then pause there. Don't add anything else. If your student is in junior high or high school, she can likely tolerate starting with 3 to 4 subjects the first week, depending on the circumstances initiating her homeschooling, and can likely increase more quickly than you would elementary students. We will circle back to discuss this more in depth in Lesson 4 on curriculum. Learning together is a lifestyle. After these 5 core subjects are set, spend the remaining time developing your homeschool community, adapting to your new learning lifestyle, and discovering that everything can lead to a lesson if you look for it carefully. The whole world is your classroom. Before you can step into that new classroom together, let's take a few practical first steps, starting with legalities. Depending on your state, homeschooling legally is likely very straightforward. Homeschooling is legal in all 50 states, and each state has their own individual requirements. Sometimes it's as easy as filling in a letter of intent with your local district. In addition, how you choose to educate your children at home will determine what legal steps you need to take. Are you homeschooling privately? Homeschooling publicly? Doing online school at home through your local school district? Or a private school? Each of these scenarios requires a different first step. For help navigating the distinctions, please watch our Quick Start Guide for a thorough overview of home-based instruction possibilities. If you have questions about your state-specific requirements, please check homeschoolexpert.com. In fact, anytime you see this green mark, it is an indicator that you can visit homeschoolexpert.com for updated links to make teaching easier. Once you are legal, the next step is to think about your goals for this year. When crafting student goals, use positive statements and be clear about what you expect. This is not a parenting principle, just to be clear. This is a goal-setting principle. If I say, don't think about a sunny day at the beach, you will probably picture a sunny day at the beach. Similarly, if I write, don't make noise on my student goal sheet, my student is now focused on the fun of noise. Outline for your student what you want him to do instead of telling him all the things you want him to avoid. It also makes for a shorter list. Once you have these student goals lined up, print them and read them aloud with your elementary students when you start school each day until this becomes second nature. This habit creates clarity and a reinforcing routine that will make your job as teacher and disciplinarian so much easier. By junior high and high school, if we have practiced this through the elementary years, we no longer need to read it aloud each school day. Our goals are 5 positive statements for success that say, I promise to work my best with a good attitude, sit with a quiet body, head up, respect personal space, focus and smile, and treat supplies with respect. Amazingly, these 5 simple goals cover almost all distraction issues. Every day, my children have the opportunity to check off meeting their student goals. I laminate their sheets and use a dry erase marker to give smiley faces as they're on track to earning each goal. This gives me room to also erase the smiley face if needed to show their behavior doesn't match our goals, with a chance to earn the smiley back by the end of the school day. Once they have earned all 5 goals, they get a sticker on their assignment book for the day. For older kids, I suggest using a signature and arranging a different incentive. It's doubly helpful to combine the sticker reward system with assignments. We'll get to that in a moment. Secondly, think a little bigger about developing family homeschooling goals. Start with the bottom up, thinking about really tangible goals for this year. These are often the easiest goals to envision because they are the most obvious to you already about your child. For example, do you want your child this year to transition to chapter books or learn to tie her shoes? Do you want your son to develop follow-through, memorize the multiplication tables, or learn to drive the car? Simply knowing your child as you do, you can look for reasonable areas of growth holistically this year that you want them to develop. Academic goals are largely driven by your curriculum and state standards, so we'll cover that more in Lesson 4 and 5. You have already taken a big step deciding to homeschool, so if that feels like plenty of goal setting for right now, put a pin in these next 2 points about goals and circle back to them later as the school year develops. Ultimately, it helps to be mindful of these other 2 goal areas as you go through your first year so that your direction will become clearer as you spend more concentrated time with your children and get to know other homeschool families. The second goal area is core family values. I encourage you to ask yourself these big questions. What does our family believe is at the center of who we are and why we do what we do? Are there principles or beliefs we share that I want to resonate through our learning lifestyle? How do I want my children to view me as their teacher-parent, and how does that affect how I reach them? The third goal area is top-down, which are the end game questions. Essentially, what kind of person do I want my child to be when she's 18 in terms of her character, abilities, independence, and adaptability? What do I want to remember most from our homeschooling journey together? Try to think of what you want at the end, and then work backwards to what you must practically do this year. Some people have an easier time setting goals bottom up, others top down. Use whatever order makes the most sense to you. I revisit our goals throughout the year, every year, because it provides both validation and direction to my days. I encourage you to be patient with your student and especially yourself. Don't make it too hard in the beginning. It's better to have some early wins and build momentum than to set unrealistic goals that leave you burned out and frustrated before the end of the year. The first place to have an early win is in the balance between structure and flexibility. I intentionally coupled structure with flexibility because they work best when they're used together. Our personalities tend to prefer one over the other, and really we all need both. So before we get started working through all this great structure, which is my favorite part, let's first talk about how to make it flex. The first principle of homeschooling flexibly is that yours is not mine. Your schedule is not my schedule. Your needs are not my needs. Your kids are not my kids. Homeschool consultants often insist that you start every day with math or whatever is your hardest subject, and that didn't work for us. We start with 5 minutes of journaling each morning as an easy on-ramp to school, so experiment with what works for you. Does that mean every day, every subject must be the same order? Again, that depends on your family. Some families prefer to start with whatever subject feels best that day. For students with anxiety-related learning challenges, it often helps them in the morning to start slow and then maintain the same subject order every day. This is where trial and error, as well as knowing your kids, comes into play. Every family homeschools differently, and I encourage you to celebrate the customization of your education, as well as respect other families homeschooling in the way that meets their needs best. Secondly, relax. Don't panic when the day or month goes off course. You will manage, you will recover, and you will eventually get back on track. It's easy to find fault with ourselves, especially when life is going sideways, instead of focusing on what our kids are actually learning in that moment. If I wake up to a flat tire on my car, my day doesn't have to be ruined. It's an opportunity to learn something different. If I'm totally honest, I wasn't sunshiny excited about my flat tire learning opportunity that showed up one morning last winter. On the other hand, my kids thought it was fantastic because they got to see me change a tire, which was a first for them, unfortunately not a first for me. It turned out to be a valuable lesson for everybody, and as for those worksheets we didn't get done, we just saved them for the next day. And everything worked out fine. Now that we have talked about the importance of flexibility, let's couple it with structure. Using my structures is optional. Using structure at all is not. Structures create a sense of calm and help us achieve goals together. It's especially helpful for students who have focus challenges like anxiety disorders, autism, time management needs, or executive functioning challenges. I developed these tools for one of my children who has special learning needs and was surprised to find it benefited all of my kids. So I encourage you to put this into place even if you don't have students with special learning needs. The first key structure is morning meeting. At morning meeting, my kids show up to the table, dressed, fed, and ready to go at the same time every school day. When they do that, they earn dessert with dinner, which has been an easy, natural consequence to get them to the table each morning. We start by talking through our Happy Monday board of what's happening that day. When the kids were younger and not yet readers, we used a Velcro tab schedule with color icons, which are available on homeschoolexpert.com. Using a visual schedule trains my kids from an early age to be ready ahead of time, so we aren't running around searching for missing soccer cleats when it's time to leave for practice. This prevents a lot of stress later in my day. After logistics, we spend time on group holistic education, which is a fancy way of saying we talk about the stuff in life that matters to us most. This is a great place in the day to incorporate your family's faith and culture into your daily routine. Talk about current events, or to do a character study and develop cultural awareness over the issues that are most important to you. Whatever your family's core values, I encourage you to build that into the heart of your day at the start of your day. At the end of morning meeting, we have Ready Break, where I assign each of the kids a 5-minute job as a chore break. Those kids with someplace to go that afternoon will also set out their supplies by the back door before coming back to the table with school baskets. Now let's move on to my favorite flexible structure, the time ladder. Different from a schedule with timed activities and a rigid structure, the time ladder gives you a format for the day by listing an order of expectations with the ability to modify. So if the dishes aren't done by 9:15, or if you need extra time for grammar, or if the puppy pees on the rug, all is not lost. You simply work your way down the list and adjust as needed. The time ladder you see on screen is what works for my family, but it may not work for yours. Again, your time is not my time, your kids are not my kids. Test your own versions of a dependable, attainable routine that works for you, your children, and your work schedule. Again, for practical suggestions for single parent or dual income households, try to create a flexible schedule. Please watch the bonus quick start guide for more information. The general plan to this is to aim to work on math, reading, and writing 5 days a week for 15 to 20 minutes. Then aim to work on science and history 2 to 3 days a week for about 15 to 20 minutes. Please note these are just an estimate in the beginning. When your student is adapting to your new role as teacher, a math lesson may take 40 minutes that later in the year would have taken less than that. Expect there to be an adjustment period. Also realize that just because I say complete a subject 5 days a week doesn't really mean 5 days. Many traditional schools offer block scheduling, where 5 days worth of a subject is condensed and finished in 3, especially at the high school level. Your curriculum will map out an appropriate number of lessons in a week, and then it's up to you to slot those lessons where it makes the most sense for you. Homeschooling does not prioritize time spent at the desk. It prioritizes mastery of the content. Take the time your child needs to confidently understand the material and then move on. With a ratio of 1:1 or even 1:4, it takes about 2 to 4 hours a day to school an elementary student, 4 to 6 hours to school a junior higher, and 5 to 7 hours to school a high school student at home, and that's with no homework left over. Be sure to build a recess into your routine, pausing between subjects for a 5-minute chore break, and then once an hour for 15 to 20 minutes of outside playtime and maybe a snack. The third structure we put into place is the assignment book, And this, coupled with our time ladder, has been invaluable in developing time management in my children to help them be successful as students, as athletes, and as citizens. I start by modeling time management skills by keeping my own assignment book with an overview of each month, which helps me manage the big picture of our schedules, including self-imposed deadlines, trips, holidays, or special projects. At the top of each month, I distill my never-ending to-do list into the top 3 jobs I hope to complete that month. I also create a space to reflect back before flipping the page to the next month to jot down a few meaningful homeschool moments we may have had along the way. Then I leave space off to the right for some of the structures to make teaching easier, and we will talk about those in Lesson 9. Each quarter or semester, I create a weekly view of our lives so I can see the balance of our days and adjust scheduling traffic jams and projects where needed. This may sound like a lot of work, but it's worth it. The more intentional we are with our time, the more efficient we are with our time, which means we have more capacity to build leisure and creativity into our days. The small amount of time I spend organizing these structures saves me significantly more time and stress by comparison. Once I'm modeling for my children my own assignment book and weekly overview, I give them their own assignment book so they can develop independent learning skills, which is one of the core values for our family. I typically fill in a week at a time of assignments, holidays, outings, and projects, which takes me about 20 minutes per student. And when I lay their calendar on the kitchen table alongside mine, it helps me balance expectations for that week. Remember that student goals sticker we talked about earlier? This is where I combine the two, awarding my child a sticker if she has met her student goals and completed her assignments for the day. It's great when my husband asks the kids to see if they've earned their stickers because it helps them stay motivated. For teens, feel free to sign the square instead. It has the same motivational accountability effect. Finally, the calendar is a great place to post chores. Wait, what does chores have to do with school? A great deal. Being responsible for a set of chores each quarter gives my children a sense of ownership and develops their self-confidence. On a practical level, having my kids home all day means there will be more dishes and mess, so a chore list helps us maintain order and a sense of calm in our home. Even in traditional school classrooms, students are given rotating responsibilities to keep the classroom clean. Having chore lists does not mean I am creating a small army of house elves. It means I'm creating a team of capable, responsible adults in training. I post their chores every quarter so they can develop mastery over that job, and then I keep a daily checkoff board alongside it for easy accountability. For a recommended guide to age-appropriate chores, check out homeschoolexpert.com. Now that you have flexible structures in place, let's talk about your workspace. Homeschooling is kitchen table friendly, so don't feel like you need to set aside a special classroom in your home. You may not end up using it anyway. Homeschooling is radically different than traditional schooling. For those of us who used to play teacher as kids, we stood before an imaginary row of desks and a chalkboard lecturing. Learning at home is not a lecture. It's a conversation between you and your child. Working together at the table will help maintain accountability with your kids, as well as make it easier for you to multitask between students if you have more than one child. While you don't need a classroom, I do recommend a storage area for easy access to school boxes, like a kitchen cabinet or hall closet. In our family, each child has their own student box filled with a scratch notebook, journal, current textbooks, current independent reading, and a container of supplies. Similarly, my teacher box is filled with answer keys, a planner, student folders for completed work, a folder of different kinds of paper, and my container of supplies. We try to be disciplined about keeping our school supplies in our school boxes to help streamline our morning and get work done efficiently. Of course, there have been seasons in life when we have needed to take some of schoolwork on the road, so I create a secondary to-go box. So again, everything is where I need it to be, and there is no excuse for not getting work done. We've talked a lot about ways to be intentional in your homeschooling with supplies and schedules, but one of the greatest ways to be intentional is in guarding your time. Diligently guard your school time. Whatever you decide those hours to be, tempting as it may be to get on social media or take a call, don't. Tell relatives or friends when you're having school hours so they know not to call, and do your best not to schedule doctor's appointments into this valuable window of time. Remember that secret plan I mentioned at the beginning to entice your kids to finish school efficiently? I incentivize my kids every day that if they can be done with school by a certain time of day, we will have special time. Special time is as simple as a 15-minute fun activity that we do together where we celebrate that school is done for the day, and it helps me remember why I love having my kids home. Typically, we decide on our special time activity during morning meeting, and you would be amazed how the hope of warm chocolate chip cookies will inspire my fourth grader to diagram sentences more quickly. For a list of special time ideas, please look for our resources on homeschoolexpert.com. Finally, stay alert. Our schedules are in a constant state of flux, and it's crucial that we weigh the value and cost of each time commitment in our lives, asking ourselves holistically, is this worth it? Travel sports teams, video games, cell phones, and other after-school jobs are neither inherently good or bad, but should be considered thoughtfully. Look at where you and your family are investing your time and be intentional about how to invest your time based on your goals. As with anything in homeschooling, please customize these principles and tools to what best fits your family. Rather than reinventing what countless homeschool parents have learned the hard way, Homeschool Expert invites you to start out with these tools and then tailor them as needed. Remember, you can do this, and we are here to help. Thanks for joining me today on Homeschool Expert. See you next time.